Good evening, Mr. Barter.
Hello.
I apologize if you can hear me through the speakers. I have external speakers on my computer,
Oh,
so if I need to tune it, just let me know.
it sounds good to me. Do I sound good to you?
Yeah, all perfect, coming in clear.
All right. So I'm Walter Barta. You're Raymond Lopez?
Yes, sir, Raymond Lopez.
Okay. Very good. I know that we have at least one more person scheduled for this session, so
Yeah, I'm a
um
little early, so
yeah, but I think I think that we won't wait that long for them. Uh we'll get started and they can join us and join the conversation organically.
okay, not a problem to me. I'm
Did you?
actually a little excited to have you kind of discuss it with me because I've been reading these things and I have a hard time understand. I'm not big on philosophy, so this is all new to me. High school they didn't teach me any of this, and I work in the safety field, so this isn't something I really ever dove into until I came to get this degree. And reading these textbook chapters, I'm trying to. I've never been one to be able to retain a lot of information quick. I'm a real visual person, audio, hands on.
Mm-hmm.
So the YouTube videos you post are actually helping a lot for me. I'll sit there and I'll play them on loop, and whenever I'm getting ready for these exams, I'll play them on loop, and I do forget a lot of it, and I do my best to try to. I'm one of those people who I like to tag certain keywords with certain definitions. So like if I'm trying to if I want to define Kantian ethics or something along that line. I try to my best to when I'm reading the overall terminology for it. I try my best to pick out a couple specific keywords to kind of help my mind remember. Hey, this relates to this, and I've never been good at school in my life, so I'm trying my best on this one. And I will say it does help a lot that you're allowing us to have a couple, more than one attempts at these tests every week right now because it's helping me a lot. Because after I finish it, I can actually go back and see, okay, I got this wrong for this and this wrong because of this. Okay, I misunderstood this one or I confused this term with this term and I had it right, but I switched them up. And, I had a couple issues like that with some of my other classes a few semesters ago to where one of my professors, he would give me a test and we take it at the end of the week or the end of the 2 weeks for that material. And, I'd get my grade and he'd tell me, oh, you got 6 out of 10 right. You failed. But then wouldn't go back and let me know what I got wrong on those questions, like which ones I got wrong or why I got them wrong. It was more of a, okay, in my head, I guess I need to go back and just reread all that material again and try my best to retain it. So it helps a lot the way you're doing this. I want to thank you for that. So
Okay. I don't want it to be too painful for you guys. I recognize I don't think anyone in the class is a philosophy person, as you might say, right? Um,
yeah,
Most of the class is either health professionals or process engineering. Should I guess your process tech, process something?
yeah, I'm the occupational safety and health technology.
Gotcha. You mentioned
Yes, sir.
safety. Yeah. But so safety, you can, if you wanted to apply this to your profession, even though it's philosophy, not health and safety, but health and safety just is like usually a system of rules to apply,
Well, yeah.
right?
I think a lot of this is going to help play directly to my job, not directly the safety aspect, but the place. I don't know if you know the company I work for, but the Gulf Coast Center, we're the mental health authority for the Galveston and Brazoria counties. So I
Okay.
don't directly work one on one with consumers and clients, but there is a lot of times being safety, like such as these last 2 weeks, for example, I'm going through a lot of client and consumer complaints because of what they thought was potential ADA related issues. And I'm also the ADA coordinator for this company. So whenever it comes time for like the clients to have a complaint because they don't fit right in this room or something doesn't seem right to them, I'm the one who has to answer to that, go out, re-inspect it, reevaluate. I have to answer to the Health and Human Service Commission. But I think along that line, this is where the ethics part is going to play in my role because I'm not directly sitting behind a computer purchasing things, doing reports all day. There's a lot of times where I'm in the public dealing with people of different cultures, different races, different ethnicities, and I'm having to be hands on with people that I wouldn't be hands on with on a day to day basis in my regular life. So there's people that I meet that I don't know anything about, but I can't go in assuming, oh, they're going to be this way. I can't go in assuming, okay, just because, I live in Texas City, these people might be rude and, obnoxious to me. I can't think those kind of things, and that's what I think ethics is really going to teach me is a different outlook on not just cultures and different people, but just, I guess, a different way to have that outlook on different topics, if that makes sense. I could
Sure.
dive down for hours on this. I'm big on like different like religions and cultures and stuff. And I mean, if you saw me, I'm covered head to toe in tattoos, and I have different
Okay.
like religion tattoos all over me, Hindu, Buddhism, and
Oh wow.
I can talk for hours when it comes to that. So when it
So
comes to like ethics, I think it's a real interesting to me. It's something I've never dove into, but I think it's so interesting, and I'm trying. I really want to do my best this this 8 weeks or so, and try to just grasp a lot of this. And I don't know how long you're going to keep these things up on your YouTube, like the chapters you have. But if that's something I'm able to access even after the semester, that would be awesome. That's
um
something I would love to see.
yeah, the main lectures should still be there. The these discussions will be there unless somebody tells me that they would prefer it to be private, and then I'll set it on private.
Right.
But yeah, it's a public YouTube account for the time being and for the foreseeable future. So feel free
Okay.
to feel free to view them however many you want. There's also other great online resources on philosophy that you can look into as well, that go into other things and so what was I gonna say? Oh, the religion. I was imagining you as like a walking coexist bumper sticker. You know those bumper stickers?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people get that kind of, I guess, vibe from me. See, I'm actually, I'm Christian myself. I have a lot of Christian values and beliefs, and I mean, people take one look at me and they don't think that I hate to say it, I don't like to judge myself, but I look like a felon. I mean, I look like I came straight from the penitentiary, and uh, a lot of people I've always been that one person that people tend to judge before they meet them, and that's one of the things that's been difficult about my job actually is not only am I well, I'm about to be 28, but not only am I a younger adult male, but a lot of people I work with, they're older folks, and they don't like to necessarily see some young kid come in covered head to toe in tattoos, and I mean my neck, hands, fingers, everything. I mean, I'm covered head to toe, and I don't think they really appreciated, when I started with this company 2.5 years ago, that I just waltzed on in and I'm telling them, hey, you can't do this, you can't do this. But at the end of the day, it's my job. I'm here to keep you safe. I'm here to keep these hazards from happening. I'm here to prevent these injuries, and that's what I have to do. And I know a lot of people are quick to judge, and I'm real big on the whole "don't judge a book by its cover" because I'm a walking example on that one.
Yeah. Well, so that honestly is one of the. If you take away something from a philosophy class, it's don't jump to conclusions. Jumping to conclusions. Well, from this chapter 2, we talked about fallacies, right? Jumping to
Yeah.
conclusion. And that's a fallacy. You might not want to call out your coworkers for fallacies,
Yeah.
but you might get some comfort personally in knowing, like, oh yeah, not every person who has tattoos is a felon, right?
Right.
That's jumping to. The argument would be like, if they have tattoos, then they are a felon. They
Yeah.
have tattoos, therefore they're a felon. But
Yeah.
we know that's not true. So
Right.
yeah. Well, I don't know. It doesn't look like our colleague has joined us yet, but that's fine. If they join us, they'll jump in.
Yeah.
And am I right that we are talking about social contract theory this session?
Yes, sir. We
Okay.
are.
So, just starting off, let's just get your just describe in your own words for me how you think of social contract theory.
I guess the best way I can think of it, I can describe it. I mean, I do know, for one, it's pretty much what the community agrees on is what's morally right, if I remember correctly. It's been probably since like Thursday or so I read it. I've had a bad weekend, but other than that, I want to say it's one of those where it's, the community agrees upon something, they think it's morally right. So, that's what the decision you make is. Even if it's something you don't agree with, if it's the majority rule, then that's what they go for. And
Okay.
personally, I can't say, and if I am describing it right, if I remember, I could be thinking of a whole different one. So correct me if I'm wrong. Um, I try not to. I mean, I told myself whenever we come to these discussions, I don't want to bring out my book and bring out my slides and start reading it as we go. I like to try to remember what I can. Like I mentioned earlier, that's one of my troubles with school is it's hard for me to. I don't want to say I have short-term memory loss, but uh, it's one of those. I remember it pretty briefly, and then it kind of slips sometimes. But
Yeah,
I
so
don't know.
I based on your definition, we should try to clarify something, which is we want to try to distinguish uh, social relativism, which is one theory that we talked about in chapter 3,
Right.
and try to distinguish that from this idea of a social contract. So
Okay.
it's you're
Let me
you're
grab my notebook, by the way, real quick.
yeah.
Pull
So
this down.
you're you're on in the right direction, which is that this is so the social contract is sort of what we can come to agree to as a society, in order to sort of resolve our disagreements. And sort of the social contract ends up being the thing that we sort of have to submit ourselves to on the rational basis that we want things to go well for ourselves, and we live amongst other people, so we submit ourselves to this contract, so that we can sort of we sacrifice a little bit in order to gain the benefits of living in a society, so to speak. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write that
Which
down real quick. Can you repeat that very last part? Because I feel like that's gonna be it's like real short, and it kind of helps me. It's like one of those things I was mentioning that could help me remember it a little better.
Yeah, so it's like the social contract is what we sacrifice a little so that we can reap the benefits. We sacrifice a little by agreeing to the social contract so that we can reap the benefits that society allows for us, if that makes sense. And
Yes.
it's in the PowerPoint lecture notes as well. Probably worded even better than that. But
Okay. I know
so
writing it will help me. That physical writing is gonna help me. The more I write it, the more it's gonna stick with me.
yeah, so we don't want to say necessarily that it's the same thing as social relativism, because social relativism is more like whatever society says morality is, that is morality.
Right.
So there's a distinction, but the distinction is, the distinction can be, it's a that there's a little bit of difficult confusion in making that distinction. So yeah, so I guess um, what so social contract theory being like that. What did you think were some of the, or maybe the best? What did you think was the best argument that you saw for social contract theory in your readings?
Like example wise, or just overall?
Like like what's the, if we're gonna think social contract theory is true, what's the best reason for it? Like you could give an example, or you could
Oh,
give
okay, okay.
give
Yeah,
like a principle, or yeah, just whatever you think is a good argument.
so I guess if it's basing on like if it's basing it off the social contract theory is true, my argument for it being true would be, I guess it would be like the argument for me agreeing for it being true, correct?
Yeah, and I mean
Okay.
you don't personally have to believe in it. You could just give me the best argument that you think is available. You might still
So
disagree with
so I
it.
can get an argument as a disagreement, correct?
Or if you disagree with something about it, you could give a disagreement. Sure.
So if I believe social contract theory is not true, like if it's something that I wouldn't believe in, could I give an argument on why I believe it's not true? Or
Yeah. Give me
okay,
a
okay.
shoot. What do you?
So I would believe it's not true because it would, what's that? What I'm looking for? Not inner beliefs, but it would cause. What's the best way to word it? Give me a second. Like it would cause like somebody's beliefs, somebody to go against their beliefs just because society agrees elsewise. If I'm wording that right. Like if I believe, let's say I believe, and I not that I believe this, but like let's say I believe guns are bad, but most of society believes guns are good. So based off that, guns are good in the society we're in, but I'm having to say guns are good because that's what society agrees on, even though I don't.
Okay. So we'll frame it like this: social contract theory would cause someone to go against their beliefs. Going against their beliefs would be bad, and so therefore, social contract theory is not a good theory. Is that
Yeah, I like
a
that a little
reasonable
better.
phrasing of it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and this actually this is consistent with how I was defining it. Is that you give a little to society, right? You give up some rights for the contract.
Right.
When you enter that contract, you can think of like other types of contracts like this, right? Like a business arrangement. You agree to pay to get something in return. A marriage, you agree to be loyal to get the loyalty in return, something like that, right?
Would it kind of be like moving into an apartment that's a good deal, but in return you can't have any pets in the apartment, so
That's
you have
a
to give up one thing to have the good stuff?
yeah. That's an
Okay. That
example.
makes a lot of sense then. Okay.
Yeah. So this first premise. So let's talk about, can we can we counter any of this argument? So we can look at the first and second premises. So the first premise, social contract theory would cause someone to go against their beliefs. I just said that definitionally seems true, because we do give up something
Right.
for the contract. So the second premise, so this one, I could ask a question for you, like, is going against beliefs always bad? What do you think about that? Do you think there's ever a case when people do need to go against their beliefs?
It's funny that you say that because yeah, there is, and it's funny because it's like on every single one of your slide like videos. The obviously the trolley theory, like the trolley example. You know, even though my beliefs, you don't kill. You know, I believe thou shalt not kill. But at the end of the day, that train has to go one of two ways. There is no option to stop that train. So do you
Okay.
kill one or do you kill five? Well, of course, I'm going to kill one and spare five. But at the end of the day, I'm going against my beliefs. But if you're in that situation to where, it's one or the other, and either way, you're going against the beliefs, you're going to do what I can't think of the other theory, but, you're sacrificing that little bit of belief to save the lives of five people. And those
Yeah.
five people, those five lives you saved, those five families that they get to go back home to, that satisfaction that's coming to me that I saved their life, even though I'm giving up that one person that I have to answer for, if that makes sense.
Sure. So, sometimes you're put in a position where you might not want to do either thing, but you have to do one or the other because there's no option where you get to do both. So you have to choose which one you believe more, so to speak,
Right.
something like that. So it's like
Exactly.
some beliefs come into conflict, so you have to choose sometimes. Yeah, so that's a counter to um, this premise number two, right?
Right.
So so maybe sometimes we do have to go against our beliefs, even though we might strongly believe them. It's just like there's a trade off, and that's what we have to do. We have to go against them. So maybe
Yeah.
premise two is not. We can think of a different way. Or maybe we want to say premise two is not always true, and then if we do that, then we've sort of given a good counter to the argument. But what do you think? Do you think that
No,
there's a way to save the argument?
no, I think too we could definitely have I guess rewarded that it's not always bad because
Sure.
such as the example right there, sometimes you don't have that choice to you know, oh, well, let's just stop the train, oh, let's just have Spider-Man drop down and stop it with his webs. I mean, it's not always a choice, and there's times in life, and I'm sure I can go into examples such as like, emergency personnel like firefighters, police officers, and such, to where they don't have time to come up with another solution. 911 operators and such, they don't have time to come up with another solution. And there's been, that was one of the things I was actually thinking of. I know it probably doesn't necessarily relate to the pop culture topic thing, but one of the one of the shows I was thinking of whenever I keeps coming to my head about it is that 911 show where they always have the different scenarios where they have to go answer things, and I know it's completely not related to the pop culture, but it keeps popping in my head, and
Well,
I think of that a lot.
you could do whatever you want. You just mentioned Spider-Man. Spider-Man does have that. Spider-Man actually almost literally has a trolley problem in it, right?
Yeah,
So uh, I think if I remember correctly in that one, doesn't he like find a way to save everybody anyway, so he doesn't have to choose?
yeah,
Actually, if I
yeah,
remember correctly, yeah. So
yeah,
he sort of he cheats the scenario. He's like,
yeah.
no, I can save everybody, so he doesn't have
But I
to.
guess when you got those powers, you can. But
Right. We don't
it's
all have
everyday people aren't going to
superpowers.
have that choice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, as long as you can apply things from this class to whatever pop culture topic you're talking about, then it's fine. So I don't know this. I don't know which show in particular you're referring to, but it sounds like it could work.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to dive in more into it. I was hoping this online like part of the Discord going over this would kind of just that. I know it wasn't necessarily going to be one on one. I don't know what the other person is, but I was hoping this interaction would kind of help guide me a little bit better toward it. And I know I can always join in whenever I see you live on here. A lot of the times, especially with my job, I'm just so swamped outside of work hours that there's nights. I mean, most of the time, I may get 5 hours of sleep a night, but this is what I signed up for: going to school, working full time,
Yeah.
father full time. So my son's 3. He's nonverbal autistic, so it's already a handful whenever I'm not at work or school. So I do my best to try to juggle these things. So
Oh,
definitely,
is that connected? I know you mentioned your job is something mental health something.
yeah, we're
Did I get
mental
that
health
right?
awareness. Yeah, so we're mental health awareness. We have the IDD program, which I'm slowly trying to get my son into. It's a long wait list, but my job does help a lot with the autism patients and stuff. And my job also, they also have like the substance abuse recovery portion of the job. People can go there to seek help and recovery, which is, believe it or not, one of the reasons why my boss hired me, even though I'm not directly related to clients. I did have a pretty bad past growing up. I'm about to be 28, so I'm about to be 8 years clean, sober. And that's whenever I turned around, went to school, started trying to better myself. And like I said, people take one look at me and they just think, oh, yeah, he's a druggie, felon, all that. But, were they right at one point? Yeah, they were. But prime example of, anybody could turn their life around and anyone can chase something better. And that's one of the things that I kind of relate to in my job is a lot of the times people will have breakdowns when I'm at a clinic doing an evaluation or a walkthrough. And, sometimes even though these nurses and RNs and, the case managers, they may be trained for these interactions and the crisis team may be involved. But sometimes it takes somebody who's been in those shoes and knows what they're going through to talk with them. And, that goes with a lot of things. I was outside installing cameras on one of the buildings one time, and a lady was walking with her son out to the car from his appointment there, and he had a seizure, and she did not know what to do. And don't ask me why she didn't know what to do, but I didn't ask questions. But my step will have a stepmom who's highly epileptic, and whenever I lived with her and my father, it was probably 5 to 10 times a day she would have a seizure. And I knew the whole process to calm it, settle it, wait for the people to arrive if needed. And if I wasn't out there, the kid might not have had such a great time. So like I said, never judge a book by its cover. Never judge a book by. I'm sure if you I probably don't wear tank tops in my on my exams whenever I take them. I know it's all webcammed and stuff, but if you ever see me on those, you'll probably take one look at me and be like, yeah, he wasn't lying. He's covered in tattoos.
Oh,
Most people, when they get to know me, they love me. I'm a great guy. I'm very talkative. If you haven't noticed, I'll die for hours, and if there wasn't a time limit on this Discord, I would be talking for hours. I mean, or until bedtime at least. But
okay.
I,
Well, let's
yeah, yeah.
so
Sorry to.
in the interest, yeah, we can try to apply some of this to what you're talking about, your job and whatnot, because it sounds like there could be scenarios related to your job that are directly related to what we just talked about, which is this idea that uh, that it would be, you're looking out for your interests, and that you're going to have to cooperate with other people in order to, let's say, just have a job, operate in society,
Right,
and so you give up a little, whether that's being a whatever that may be for you. You give up a little
right,
to follow the rules, so that things go better for you, because things are going well, uh, per the contract. So
right.
in your scenario at work, can you think of, so would you say that this is something that you find yourself doing at work? You're obviously, you want a job, so
Right.
are
Oh,
you,
100%.
what's that?
100%.
Yeah. So
And you're
what's
talking about like this argument right here, correct?
Yeah, so do you find yourself to be in a social contract like the one described
Yeah.
in the yeah.
And the reason I can say I do is, I guess it kind of ties back to like my personal beliefs, like my religious beliefs and stuff, and I guess at the same time personal beliefs of things. Um, One of the things that we do is we have a obviously a no discrimination policy, no turn away. We serve everyone no matter what. And this is just one example. Like for example, somebody can be, and this has happened before. Obviously HIPAA. I can't say names and go into all that detail, but hypothetically, I'll say that this individual, they were gang affiliated very clearly, and I don't believe in helping people like that. I'm one of those people. I believe you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink it. You can give it all the tools you want, but if it only can help itself. And I have that strong belief because of how I grew up that gangs. I don't tolerate that stuff. If you make the decision you want to be in a gang and you don't want help from police, emergency officials, you don't want government help, you just want to be a lone wolf. That's cool. Well, don't come for help whenever you need the help. And that's a belief I've always had because of how I grew up. I can't really say it's religious, but that's just how I grew up. And there's a lot of times to where people come in and we have to, me and other people have to help these people and tailor to these people, even though in my everyday life outside of work, I wouldn't do that.
Mm.
I wouldn't, I wouldn't. I mean, there's a lot of sayings I could say right now that aren't appropriate, but I wouldn't help those people. But at work, I know this is my job. This is what I get paid to do. I'm paid to make these people safe, clients, staff, everybody, and that's what I'm going to do.
Oh,
And
interesting.
it's
So,
similar along the lines of like carrying. I'm a big believer in concealed carry, open carry, and at my job we can't do that. It's against policy as staff to carry weapons.
yeah.
But any client coming into the building can freely carry a gun, freely carry knives, swords. So that kind of I feel like relates to me because I can't go in there and say, okay, well, I believe I can do this. I'm going to do this, but I have to give up that freedom of okay, I may agree that I can do this anywhere outside of work because I can,
Yeah.
but I will not do this at my job because they told me not to. So I'm giving that up so I can get this paycheck, so I can have the stability, give my family the life they need. It's one milestone I have to get through, and that's how I look at how this applies to me.
Yeah. Those are good examples. Um, one thing that I am thinking of to ask you related to this, you brought up gangs. Do you remember the idea of the state of nature that was talked about in this chapter?
Yes, briefly, I briefly yes.
So it's like it's
The
so
anarchy, correct?
yeah, it's like the anarchy that exists, sort of like when the social contract has not been established yet. And
Right.
gangs are an interesting example. Do you think that gangs, when somebody like is joined a gang and they're committing violence, is that a case that like is a case where they haven't joined the social contract? Maybe. What do you think?
Well, see, I look at that as, and this could be being viewed the wrong way, but I look at it as, I mean, this is coming from my experience because I will say when I was 13 to like 16 years old, I was affiliated in a gang. That's why I have the beliefs I do. And to me, being in that, and I'm gonna say this from like as the perspective of somebody else being on the inside of one, I feel like that gang itself is the social contract theory. Once you go in
Interesting.
there, you may not agree with every little thing that that gang may require you to do or want you to do, but you're giving up those beliefs because you want those drugs, you want that money, you want that recognition, you want that importance in that gang. You want to be respected, so you're giving up. Okay, even though I may not want to go rob that corner store because I believe robbing is wrong, they told me to do this. They said it's going to bring me everything else I want, so I'm going to go do that. So
Interesting.
even though like the community itself, the world's social contract theory per se is one way, them being in that gang in this community, that gang itself has its own social contract theory that could be the complete opposite of
Yeah.
what we have.
Yeah, I think that that's a good observation, and that's consistent with the chapter, because they talk about in the chapter how like these in like the anarchy, just like gangs might form just to have societies in the anarchy, and those gangs are following
Right.
their own rules, right?
Hmm.
And then you join that social contract, but what you're pointing out is that's a different social contract from the social contract of like the USA,
Correct.
or the state of Texas, or whichever level we're talking about, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that's an interesting it's an interesting observation, and it might make, well, on the one hand, it's like it seems like that is actually what's going on. On the other hand, it might make us a little queasy because it might make us feel like, well, is everything a gang in some
Right.
way? Like the gangs are gangs, but are we a gang too? Because we're agreeing to follow the laws, but are the
Mhm.
laws are is that the laws of like the state of Texas? Is the state of Texas a gang? We can ask a question
Right.
like
Well,
that.
kind of like how we may look at other countries. We might look at it, and and I'm sorry if I'm wording this wrong, but and by no ways I want this to sound bad in any way, but we might look at like Africa and like the Nigerian tribes and be like, we might call them, like they're a cult in a way or something, but to them they're just that's their social contract theory. That's life to them. That's normal. That's how they live. That's how they function. That's how they run their society. And even though from our perspective over here in the United States, we look at it as like, oh, they're eating with their hands, they're animals and things like that. Well, to them, that's normal. Kind of like, me trying to use chopsticks. I don't use chopsticks. I can't use them. I don't know how. I'm going to grab my fork and eat my sushi. Don't judge me. But, that's how I look at it. And,
Yeah.
I, I do look
The
at it
other
as it could
social
be everything.
contracts may seem strange from the perspective of our own social contract. Yeah. Yeah.
Just like how we probably look at, me as a everyday civilian, I look at political officials as like their own gang, if that makes sense. They all run and function a certain way, they do things a certain way, and then here we are, kind of like the whole famous saying, "Oh, why should I vote? It doesn't matter." Why does my vote matter? That's how us regular everyday people kind of are tailored to, and as a I don't want to say as a social contract, but we just kind of live that life of, oh, well, what we do doesn't matter. They run the show. They're gonna do what they want anyways. We look at them as their own cult, their own gang, their own group. But in reality, it's just to them it may look like the whole United States per se is one big social contract theory. They're just at the top of it. They may not look at it the same way we look at it from the bottom up as they look at it from the top down.
Yeah. And when you're and those in a sense those other countries, as unstable as they may seem to us, they are at least attempting to offer the stability that our social contract is also offering us, right? Something like that. Yeah. So, the one last thing, because we're already getting towards time, I think, so I don't want to keep you forever. But the last thing, we already talked about a little bit about your job, a little bit about the theory. We didn't talk about the prisoner's dilemma yet, which is a special feature of this chapter that is worth looking into and might be confusing. Do you remember the prisoner's dilemma? How that goes?
Yeah, that's the one. If I remember, um, it's like whenever that's the one where they come up with an outcome, but it's worse than what would have been if they just compromised. Correct? I think.
Yeah. So
Trying to think. That's the key
it's
words I'm
like
trying to
that.
remember right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So the best outcome for everybody is to compromise. But from the perspective of from the position of each individual person, the best choice personally is to dissent, and not compromise. So what you have is you have two people. They both really, the best thing would be for them to compromise, but in every given case, one of them may dissent because that's better for that one person.
Right.
And that's sort of the used as the justification for why these social contracts are so important. Basically, if we don't all cooperate, then basically there's an incentive to dissent, even though the best thing to do is probably to cooperate.
Right.
And the problem is, so if we both dissent at the same time, then it's the worst outcome. So if we it's like going to war, right? Going to war is the worst outcome.
Right.
Peace is the best outcome. But if I can cheat you, that's good for me, and if you can cheat me, that's good for you. So it's really
Yeah,
it's a
that was
hard situation.
that little chart, right? With the
Yeah.
4 4, the 2 2 0 6, and then 6 0, correct?
Yeah.
Like the years in prison. Yeah. Okay, now it's starting to come back a little bit more now that you're explaining it. Okay.
Yeah. And do you have any particular questions about that? I know that that's one of the um, more difficult concepts. Here's the chart from Wikipedia, how they put it, so we can see the
Okay. Yep. 1 1 2.
yeah.
Yep. Same
So
thing.
so basically, yeah, just same thing. If they both cooperate, it's the best thing. If they if they go to war, it's the worst thing. Um, but they both have incentives to cheat each other. So
But okay, I don't know if I'm just confused by this diagram. So like, realistically, if they both just stayed silent, that's the best outcome.
yeah, that's like the social contract peace situation.
And they're both gonna get time anyways. But if one of them cheats the other, but they both end up cheating each other, then they both just screw themselves, pretty
Yeah,
much. Okay,
yeah,
okay, that makes sense now. That makes sense.
yeah. So that's sort of like, so this is to bring it back to what we talked about with the beliefs. Um, this is sort of a reason. This is like a reason why I might have to give up some of my beliefs. You might have to give up some of your beliefs in order to cooperate and make peace in a society, so to speak. Even though neither of us really likes it very much to give up our
Right.
beliefs, right?
So we both only spend a year in prison instead of two.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because we don't want to end up in the worst case. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Any questions about that, or we can have questions about any particular topic related to this chapter, or even anything else.
Not off the top of my head. Mm, a bit of those examples, like when we were talking, doing the examples of each part, like going throughout the discussion, that helped a lot. Like I told you in the beginning, when it comes to this, hands-on will always be my best thing, and even just verbally speaking in examples of something I've dealt with hands-on, applying it to this itself, that already is just it's done more than what I've read in the last 2 weeks. So uh,
Yeah,
that's all.
and I don't know if you might have watched it, but I did put up a like reading strategically video where my advice sort of is to it I my advice is sort of to not to read like you need to complete it, but more like
Right.
to read and search for the arguments. That's like a big important thing in philosophy, is finding the argument and figuring out whether the argument is good. So um, sort of like reading, looking for where the argument is, and that's the most important part of the chapter. And then there will be little counters and little objections and stuff, and
Yeah.
defenses of the argument. um, so and 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 actually ultimately the quizzes and tests, um, as long as you know the big ideas, you shouldn't have to remember. You shouldn't have to totally like memorize the chapter. Hopefully, it should sort of. I'm hoping that people can sort of reason their way through it.
That's what the first two exams I did decently on, my better, like my second try attempt at it. Because after failing it the first time on both, it was, I mean, I sat there and just read, and I was reading, because what really got me was and this is like this for any course I've taken, like the questions where it's, what are the advantages of XYZ, and you have all the different choices. One thing about me is I'm dyslexic, and I hate it. But I'll sit there and I'm reading it, and I'm telling and I have a bad habit of it. I'll read it and be like, okay, well, I know these aren't it, and then I'll click them. And I don't know why I do.
Oh yeah,
I'm doing opposites on accident, and it messes with my head, because in my head I'm thinking I'm doing the right thing. It is that's why I really struggle right now. Is, to me, I may remember the advantages differently in my head than what they're phrased by on the test. So it takes
yeah,
me, after I finish my attempt, I go back and I start studying it, and I'm studying it because short term I have a pretty decently good memory. You give me a week after reading that material, and I'm gonna have brain farts for the next hour. And and a lot of that's the majority is a straight result from my job, and being full time father and everything at home. And I really do try my best on it. And that's why I was saying, keywords really help me with this. Those examples, hands on, and then keywords. When I think of something, I think of, okay, um, like I think of, like for example, the state of nature. The biggest keyword I remember is anarchy. And that's how I kind of remember, okay, well, anarchy ties to this. So these can relate to that. And when I think of, what was it, veil of ignorance, that term, the key word I remember from that one was imaginary. That's all I could think of is imaginary. That's where, that's, so I try to base what I'm reading off of those key words I remember about that topic. And then between that and obviously selecting the wrong thing sometimes, and then my dyslexia playing into it, I'll do bad. I tried, I think, two or three times. I don't remember how many on this last exam. And I think the best I got was a 53, and felt bad about that one. I just told myself to try better next time. I
well, you don't
ran.
have to. You don't. You don't have to feel too bad because I think that they're designed to be hard and then retakeable. So
Right.
don't worry too much. If you take it, look at the answers, retake it. That can help. I
And
think
that's what I've been doing.
tremendously.
I
Yeah.
kind of treat it such as like the same way. Whenever I drive around at work, I have don't call it corny, but I'll go to your YouTube, and if it's if chapters 5, 7, 8 this week, I'll just play those videos on repeat and listen while I'm driving, and I try my best to retain that information, even if it's throughout the week. I drive a lot for work, so I try my best to, between your class, and I have two other classes this semester that I'm doing, that I try to evenly space out my time between the three and knock them all out. And unfortunately, this is the one class that I never really dealt a lot with philosophy, but I'm thinking, by the end of this 8 weeks, I'm hoping it'll be a lot more of a light bulb in my head. The more I learn into it, because like we spoke about at the beginning, everything I've dealt with in my life, learning about religions and different cultures, I think this will tie a lot into that, to help me understand more about what I like to learn in real life. I like to study cultures, I like to study religions, and I think ethics and philosophy just directly ties to it. So I'm gonna enjoy it. I know I will.
Okay. Well, I'll let you go here. Definitely ask me questions if you're feeling stressed. Or have any concerns. I'll be I'll be on here for another hour with another session, and then maybe a little
Okay.
longer if and I'll be here every week, every other week, right? Um,
Okay.
so I'll see you at the session for the second half of the class,
Yes,
and
sir.
we'll talk more about whatever topic. So,
Sounds good to me.
all right, have a good night, Raymond.
All right, Mr. Barter. Thank you. You have a good night
All right,
too.
thank you.